Welcome to Lesson 6, Workbook Exercises, Hebrew 1 and 2, Bright Old Testament 502, 504. Today we're going to be looking at Part 10 of your workbook, dealing with the construct relationships between nouns. You'll be asked quite a bit in these particular workbook lessons to form the construct relationship rather than simply translating them. I typically don't have students go from English to Hebrew, or even translate from Hebrew to Hebrew, forming the conjugations, because this isn't a practice that we actually do in Hebrew. We only go from Hebrew to English, translating the Hebrew text. However, I'm asking you to do that in these first few lessons because it is good practice to solidify these particular noun endings, and will serve you well in the weeks to come. As we get into future lessons, I will probably not ask you to do the English to the Hebrew or the Hebrew to Hebrew, but for now we're going to maintain this practice, just to solidify the content. In the first set of exercises in Part 10 of your workbook, you are asked to take a noun and to put it into its construct form. If it is singular, you will maintain the singular state. If it's plural, you will need to make it plural. I am asking you to do these because it will emphasize the vowel reduction patterns that take place when we move into the construct. Because in the construct, technically the noun has lost all accent and simply maintains a secondary accent, the accent technically shifts all the way to the end of the construct relationship. So because of this, we treat the noun as though there is no accent, which affects the whole open, closed, long, short vowel pattern, which is why I'm emphasizing this. So here for number 1, the word is nahar, river. How would we conjugate this in the masculine singular construct form? The answer to number 1 is nahar. It sounds the same, but it is spelled differently. Instead of having a kametz under the nun, now we have a vocal schwa under the nun. This is due to pro-pretonic vowel reduction because now the accent, or the primary accent, has shifted to that second word, has shifted to the second half of the construct chain, so that now the kametz is too far away from the major emphasis. Thus it reduces to a schwa. We also have lost the major accent on the second syllable, har. This is what enabled it to have a long vowel, the fact that it had the accent. But now it doesn't have the accent. Now it is a closed, unaccented syllable, which requires a short vowel. Both of these are normal, consistent rules, and we'll see the same actually in number 2. So how would you do number 2? Number 2 is exactly the same. The kametz reduces to a schwa, and the second kametz, now also in a closed unaccented syllable, becomes a short vowel, a patak. Let's move on now to exercise set 2. The second set of exercises in part 10 of your workbook takes the absolute noun and places it once again into the construct. These are irregular, which is why they are not in section 1. We're going to walk through these, but I'm going to do something a little different. Rather than walking through them individually, step by step, I'm going to show all the answers and explain each of them in turn. Hopefully by now you've had an opportunity to go and do the exercises in this section. If you've not, stop the video and then come back and look at it. Number 1, we have bait. This is fairly irregular, but it is regular in its being irregular, in that bayit always becomes bait, and there are several other nouns that act in a similar way, as we'll see in just a moment. Number 2, isha has become eshet, with the emphasis on that first syllable, a. It is also a seireh. It is a lengthened hirik. Because it's a seireh, we don't need the dagesh in the shin, so we can eliminate that. And because we have shet, we have a closed, unaccented syllable, we have a short vowel, in this case the E vowel that is very common in the feminine construct. In mavet, we have mot. This is because that vav sometimes doubles as a vowel. In fact, the verb form is moot. So here we have mot, with the vav acting as a holem vav. Barakah has become birkat. We have a schwa that has now become a hirik. This is because the kametz underneath the resh also reduced to a schwa, and when you have two schwas in a row, the first one becomes a hirik. So this is now Hirik Shva, beer. And now instead of caught with a komets, we have caught with a patak. Mayim has become may. You can see the similar pattern up to bayit, bait, mayim, may. We have av, which is now shortened to avi. This is a construct form, but you'll notice that it is a hirik yod instead of a sere yod, which is a little bit unusual, but this is avi, father. We also have the patak shva underneath the aleph, because the aleph does not take a simple shva. So we have avi, father of. We also have malakim, which has become malke. We have a similar situation that has happened here, where the lamed has the komets, which has reduced to a shva, and in a lot of circumstances we would expect milke, but instead the patak has simply gone back to its original form, being an A-class vowel. So they get malke instead of milke. Anashim has become anshe, similar to how up in number 2 we had isha that become eshet. Here we have a nun that has a komets that has reduced to a shva. When the two shvas were together, they cancel the first one out, except instead of becoming a hirik, as we would expect, because this is an aleph, it simply takes the vowel that was already there with the compound shva, hence the patak. In number 9, we have ach, and just like with number 6, father, we have achi, where we have the komets reducing to become a shva, but the shva is a compound shva because it's underneath a guttural. We also don't have a sere here, we have a hirik yod. Avi and achi are both like this. And then we have davarim, words, which becomes divrei, for the reasons that we've already seen, where the komets under the bait becomes a shva, the two shvas in a row according to the rule of shwa have the first one become a hirik, and then we have the sere yod final ending. Hopefully these make sense. If not, go back and look at your book as they're talked about there in chapter 10. This set of exercises, exercise set 3 in part 10 of your workbook, is simply translation. How do we translate these particular nouns in the construct chain? So take a shot here at number 1. How would you translate this particular phrase? In number 1, in our first construct chain, we have the laws of the good and upright king. We have the laws, Torot, which is in a construct relationship with Hamelech. Torot is feminine plural. Hamelech is masculine singular. Remember that my particular software does not like to print the kaf on Melech. So we have Torot, Hamelech. Torot does not have the definite article, but it is definite because it is in a construct relationship, and a construct chain will only ever have one definite article, and it will be found in the absolute noun at the end of the chain. We then have two adjectives, hatov and v'hayashar, the good and the upright, both of which have definite articles. We know that these go with hamelech because they agree in the definiteness, all having the definite article, and because they agree in gender and number. Both tov and yashar are masculine singular. Since torot is feminine plural, they could not be modifying that word, so they must go with hamelech, the king. Thus we have the laws of the good and upright king. Next, let's look at number 5. I could not get the numbers to print, so the number is missing, but this is number 5 here in exercise 3. How would we translate this particular construct chain? The answer to number 5 is the good servants of the prophet, Avdei Hanavi. We know that Avdei is servants in a masculine plural construct relationship with Hanavi, masculine singular. Hanavi has the definite article, therefore Avdei must also be definite. The servants of the prophet. At the end of the phrase we have Hatovim, the good ones. We know that this goes with Avdei because it agrees with Avdei in gender and number, masculine plural. Hanavi is masculine singular, therefore the good servants is in mind, not the good prophet. If this was the good prophet, it'd be hatov, but instead it's hatovim, which goes with avdei, masculine plural. Thus, we're able to figure out which adjective goes with which noun, since all adjectives, regardless of which noun of the construct chain they modify, will come at the end of the construct chain. What about this last one? This is number 10 from exercise 3. How do we know which noun the adjective goes with? Hagadolim, the great ones. Is it the great prophets or is it the great sons? The answer is yes. Actually, both answers are correct. Because Gadalim does not have enough information to tell us what we're talking about here, whether it be the prophets or the sons. Both are masculine plural, both are definite. So here we would have to translate it both ways. In exercise section 4 of part 10 of your workbook, you are asked to take an English phrase and render it in Hebrew. This is really good practice in learning the construct, although we never go from English to Hebrew. Typically, when we're studying Hebrew in the Bible, we always go from Hebrew to English, but it's still really good practice. Reminder, in number 2 and number 5, we have some vowel reduction that takes place, and in number 3, we have an irregular form. So be sure to take note of those as you're rendering the construct form of the noun. Well, that's all I have for you today. Make sure that you do your homework exercises, take pictures of it, and send it to me.